Ryan will be the CEO. What do you mean? This is the motel that I saved. I spent months refining the modern, mountain-inspired design in the lobby, and my voice reverberated throughout the completely remodeled space. The dismissive wave from Mom was like a kick to the face. Claire, your brother's leadership skills are more innate. Honey, you are also, as though speaking to a child. She described herself as detail-oriented, with his hands in his pockets and that smug look I'd seen since we were youngsters. Ryan walked in at that moment. You should not take it personally, sis. Someone must take on the daily tasks while I focus on the bigger picture. It never occurred to me that at 52, I would be battling for recognition in my own family's business. My name is Claire Anderson. I had sacrificed everything after 20 prosperous years of hotel management in Chicago in order to return home to Colorado and turn around our faltering family business. What was the irony? My younger brother Ryan had been working at several jobs for more than a year. But I was the only one with real hospitality expertise. This is what truly irritates me. My dad told me, in tears, that they were only a few weeks away from going bankrupt 8 months ago. I had no hesitation. I came home to provide a hand after selling my property in Chicago and using my funds. There was a time warp in the motel. The motel was characterized by outdated furnishings, a minimal social media presence, and embarrassing reviews. I modernized everything, including the lobby furnishings and the reservation system. Working day and night, I spent countless evenings hunched over spreadsheets, training employees, and negotiating with suppliers. Due to my business connections, travel magazines featured us prominently. It was successful. It was an amazing transformation. From being a 2-star nightmare to the buzz of the town. The Mountain Pine Lodge has evolved. We increased our reservations and were making a profit for the first time in years. We thoughtfully selected everything, from the enhanced utilities to the locally produced artwork, to provide an outstanding guest experience. But now that I'm standing here and seeing Ryan grin as our parents give him everything I've worked so hard to build, I know that none of it matters to them. What is the most unpleasant aspect of this experience? At the staff meeting tonight, they will announce his promotion. I delivered our quarterly results during the same conference, surpassing all previous records. I can sense our staff members' attention on me. Sarah, our head housekeeper, has been a part of our team for 20 years. They all know who made the biggest difference in this town. However, they are compelled, like me, to watch this farce unfold while feigning that it is fair or normal. I'll take you back a little so you can see how we got here. Since my grandparents constructed the Mountain Pine Lodge in 1971, it has been a part of our family. I practically grew up in these corridors, absorbing every aspect of the company from its inception. I saw Dad take care of maintenance problems and assisted Mom with check-ins while the other kids played at home. I adored the hotel, which seemed like a second home to me. Ryan, though, he wasn't like the others. He was 3 years my junior and never had any interest in the family company. In college, I was majoring in hotel management, while he was switching between architecture and business before quitting to focus on himself. This didn't appear to worry Mom and Dad. They think that he is just creative. He needs time to come to terms with things. I was advancing my career in Chicago at the same time, rising from front desk manager to regional director for a large hotel chain. My family gave me a lukewarm congrats on every accomplishment. That's great, sweetie, but when will you be returning home? When will you exchange vows? It was never sufficient. When Dad called to discuss the hotel's financial difficulties, I fully understood what I needed to do. The establishment was losing money. Obsolete systems. Ineffective procedures. There is no effective marketing plan in place. The internet reviews were harsh. Stuck in the past. Major upgrading is required. The cost is not worth it. The disintegration of my family's legacy devastated me. I jumped right into the rescue effort after taking a leave of absence from my Chicago work, which ultimately turned into a resignation. Damage control, equipment repairs, booking system updates, and staff training on basic customer service were the only activities during the first month. To update the lobby and replace the outdated carpets, I took money out of my savings. I carefully considered every dollar I spent in order to optimize return on investment. The fact that Ryan wasn't even present for all of this truly irritates me. While in Denver, he was ostensibly networking but was actually simply having a good time with his pals. He would periodically attend family gatherings, provide a few hazy recommendations about updating our strategy, and then vanish once again. However, his sporadic contributions were strangely valued equally to my everyday routine in my parents' eyes. It would be worthwhile, I told myself often. I believed that people would eventually recognize my value after observing the results, which included increased bookings, improved ratings, and positive reviews. I suppose I ought to have been more aware. It has been a nightmare for the last 3 weeks. Ryan acts as if he owns the establishment, making several changes without having any idea how a hotel operates. He removed our continental breakfast service only yesterday in an attempt to save money, seemingly without realizing that our morning ratings are one of our best-selling features. He simply chuckled and remarked, "Sis, numbers aren't everything," when I attempted to show him the guest satisfaction figures. However, this morning's events were what really drove me insane. He was dismissing Maria, our head of housekeeping, who had worked for us for 15 years. When I stepped in, why, she wasn't adaptable enough to his new timetable. This system would have left us dangerously understaffed during periods of high checkout demand. Although I was able to step in and preserve her job, I will always remember the humiliated expression on her face. I tried discussing it with my parents. I supplied financial predictions for the upcoming quarter, spreadsheets demonstrating our success, and guest feedback complimenting our recent advancements. While Mom stroked my hand and whispered, "Dear, you need to give your brother time to find his footing." Dad simply gazed at his coffee. His ideas are so brilliant. As I was heading home, I noticed the old Riverside Lodges for sale sign. Before it fell into ruin last season, it was our primary rival for years. As I pulled into the parking lot, my thoughts raced. The property had a lot of promise. It was nearer the ski slopes, had a much larger spa, and had greater views than our hotel. I knew precisely what to do with it, even if it needed some work. For nearly an hour, I sat in my car, staring at that sign and recalling all the times my parents had chosen Ryan over me. Every accomplishment is discounted, every recommendation is questioned, and every contribution is downplayed. Perhaps things finally clicked into place. Or something inside of me snapped. Right there in the parking lot, I made a call to my realtor. The owners wanted to sell, and I was able to do so because of my excellent credit score and funds. I had already planned a viewing for the next morning by the time I got home. I felt invigorated, even eager, for the first time in months. Ryan wouldn't have to ruin all I'd worked so hard to create. Rather, I would create something entirely original and personal. Show them what they forfeited by picking him over me. The following several months were quite busy. I put my all into making the Riverside Lodge into something truly remarkable. I was working with contractors, renovating venues, and assembling a team of elite hospitality specialists at Mountain Pine Lodge while Ryan was busy hosting parties. I gave it the name The Summit. I wanted everyone to fully comprehend my goals, even if they were somewhat obvious. The word spread swiftly across the town. Others accused me of being bitter because I competed against my own family. Others silently encouraged me, particularly those who had collaborated with me at Mountain Pine. Initially, my folks attempted to guilt-trip me. "How could you harm your brother in this way?" To us? At our increasingly infrequent family dinners, Mom would inquire. I simply grinned and shifted the conversation. In the meantime, Mountain Pine Lodge was suffering as a result of Ryan's poor management. Their reviews began to decline. There have been complaints of poor maintenance, irregular service, and even difficulties with hygiene. In the first month of his tenure, 3 longtime employees left. Rumor had it that they had to cut their rates in order to keep the place occupied. 6 months after that fatal day in the foyer, the Summit had its grand opening. I will always remember the looks on my family's faces as they entered. Ryan's hardly contained rage, Dad's startled eyes taking in the crowded home, and Mom's tight grin barely masking her disbelief. There, the local newspaper interviewed visitors and took pictures of Aspen's newest upscale resort. When Ryan caught me near the bar, he whispered, "You're trying to destroy us." This attack directly targets our family. I simply grinned and said, "No, Ryan, here I am, thriving in spite of our family." The two hotels couldn't have been more different from one another. The Summit was causing a stir with its eco-friendly projects and opulent facilities, while Mountain Pine Lodge was having trouble with basic upkeep. Every element I had envisioned at the family hotel was now a reality here. Everything was precisely as I had imagined, from the cutting-edge spa facilities to the cuisine of the restaurant, which featured locally produced ingredients. However, success came with its own set of difficulties. Other lodging establishments began imitating our creative reservation approach. My parents' old acquaintances in town began chatting among themselves about how I was ruining the family. Some of my devoted Mountain Pine Lodge visitors even confessed to feeling uneasy about picking a side. As the Summit gained momentum, significant challenges emerged. There was pressure on my old Mountain Pine Lodge merchants to stop doing business with me. Some of my longtime family friends abruptly stopped coming to our regular coffee dates. Even though Mom had quite the social circle in town, I lost my position on the local tourism board. A conflict of interest apparently existed. However, I was not going to allow small-town politics to ruin all I had worked so hard to achieve. I discovered better suppliers in Denver when locals were hesitant. After the tourist board fired me, I focused on building direct connections with ski excursion companies. Every challenge just made me more creative and tenacious. Then the greatest test of all took place. One morning, Mom and Dad arrived at my workplace looking distressed. The bank was about to call on Mountain Pine's loans. Ryan's poor management had finally caught up. They want my return. My intention was to teach Ryan the ropes, of course. But not as CEO. Mother begged. We're family. We cannot allow the hotel to fail. I felt oddly at ease as I gazed at them both seated across from my desk in the office I had constructed for myself. I responded that I had offered to help 8 months prior. Ryan was your choice. You must now live with that decision. Dad tried something else. He whispered softly. Consider your grandfather's legacy. Our family has owned this motel for many generations. And I shot back, trying to keep that heritage alive. You entrusted it to someone who treats it like his playground. After that, the rumors around town became more nasty. I used to be the resentful sister, the ungrateful daughter, and the one who would turn against her own family out of spite. Those rumors hurt more on certain days than I'd like to acknowledge. However, I knew I had made the correct decision every morning when I walked into the Summit's lobby and saw my vision come to life. My crew turned into my extended family. Many have left Mountain Pine because they were fed up with Ryan's disorganized management style. They realized that this was not a place for retaliation. Making something significant was the goal. We wanted to create something that we could all be proud of. The Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards, held biennially, served as a pivotal moment. Mountain Pine Lodge was noticeably missing from all categories, whereas the Summit received a nomination for Best New Boutique Hotel. My team and I took our seats in the ballroom when they announced our victory. I saw my folks in the back of the room as I made my way to the stage. They had unexpectedly arrived, most likely anticipating continuing to support our family hotel as they did for many years. The expressions on their faces spoke for themselves. Dad appeared to have aged 10 years. And Mom was holding back tears. Ryan wasn't present. Months before, he had ceased going to business gatherings, saying they were only popularity contests. However, everyone in the room understood the significance of this moment. Officially, the pupil had outperformed the instructor. The meticulous daughter had created something superior to the family inheritance they had refused to give her. I praised our visitors and my colleagues during my award speech. And I even brought up Mountain Pine Lodge, the place where I first discovered my passion for hospitality. By the uneasy shuffling of the audience, I could tell they saw my covert jab. However, the subsequent discussion was what truly made a difference. An editor of a well-known travel magazine asked me to do an interview. Clearly listening, my parents lingered around as we discussed the Summit's success. They listened to my career story, including how failure to become CEO inspired me to start my own business. I said, loud enough for them to hear. Sometimes the best success stories come from being underestimated. That evening, The magazine's editor informed me about the inclusion of the Summit Best Boutique Hotel in the Rockies in their upcoming issue. An article about conventional hotels' difficulties adapting, of which Mountain Pine Lodge is a classic example, would appear in the same issue. Our tiny village felt like a bomb went off when the story was released. All those who had muttered that I was spiteful had to admit the truth. While I had created something remarkable, Mountain Pine Lodge was collapsing due to their own disastrous choices rather than mine. It's difficult to avoid experiencing a range of feelings when you reflect on everything. The way my parents handled me and dismissed all I had done as though it were inconsequential still causes me pain. However, another part of me, possibly the larger part, feels free. I'm not waiting for approval from others, I'm living my life on my terms. Every morning when I enter the summit, I am reminded of the things I created myself, with visitors talking eagerly about their plans for the day, staff working quickly and smiling warmly, and the subtle scent of freshly made coffee blending with the crisp mountain air that fills the room as the doors open. The lively lobby is alive with activity. I'm so proud to watch the Mountain Pine Lodge flourish because it's all I've ever wanted it to be. In unexpected ways, my summit team has become my family. Several of them, including Sarah and Maria, were once workers at my parents' hotel who quit because they shared my perception of the lack of leadership. Their dedication humbles me, and they have played a crucial role in the summit's success. Sarah often quips that she finally feels respected for her opinions and experiences. And I fully comprehend her sentiments. I've begun getting back in touch with old pals outside of work. I neglected to maintain vital relationships for years because I was too preoccupied with trying to prove myself to my parents. I'm now re-establishing those relationships by scheduling coffee dates and walks. Some of the town's residents who initially opposed my decision to compete with my family now respect my accomplishments. Additionally, I've begun to rediscover my position in the community. I've been able to rebuild relationships and even forge new ones by hosting events at the summit. We had a fundraiser for the neighborhood animal shelter in our new event space just last month. And it was a huge success. I was reminded of my original motivation for working in hospitality, to design environments that make people happy and comfortable, when I witnessed individuals uniting for a worthy cause. It's not flawless, though. I sometimes think of my parents and Ryan, especially on calm evenings. Even though they have caused me pain, I wish things were different. I've found myself questioning whether they've ever fully comprehended the sacrifices I made to preserve the history of our family. Nevertheless, I've realized that I no longer require their approval. No one can take away my pleasure or my achievements, they are mine. I'm now standing in my own light after living for so long in the shadow of their expectations. My parents didn't get in touch with me again until around 3 weeks after the Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards. They invited me to join them for supper. We were the only ones invited. After some hesitation, I made the decision to go. I wasn't waiting for a genuine apology, but I was curious to hear what they had to say. The vibe was different when I got to the house. My dad avoided eye contact and fiddled with his watch, as he often did when he felt uncomfortable, while my mom smiled nervously at me. They struck up small talk over supper. The temperature was exceptionally warm for the time of year. They were informed about the summit's most recent 5-star evaluation. They were clearly preparing for something. At last, my father cleared his throat and began. We wanted to let Claire know that we're proud of what you've done. We know we haven't always shown it, but we do recognize how much work you've put in. My mother said hurriedly. The summit is. It's amazing. Their remarks didn't make me feel good, even if I wanted to. It felt like a belated response after years of rejection. I simply nodded and waited for what I knew would happen next instead. As expected, my mother jumped right in. Ryan has been having difficulties. He's in over his head. And the hotel is struggling. We wanted to know whether you could, perhaps lead him? Can you help us get back on track? I remained silent for a minute. I stared at them both, letting their words linger in the air. I observed them closely. My dad seemed to be examining the tablecloth as if it held the answers to all their problems, while my mom, with her well-groomed nails, gripped her wine glass a little too tightly. Finally, I responded in a calm but strong voice that I had promised to help a year ago. In order to rescue Mountain Pine Lodge, I sacrificed my life in Chicago, knowing I could make it work. You put Ryan in charge despite his unpreparedness. You didn't want me to be your leader back then. And now that everything has gone wrong, you want me to take over? I apologize, but I am unable to accomplish it. My mother started to argue, but I interrupted her by raising a hand. If you want advice, I'll offer it to you. I can suggest vendors, tactics, and even staff training courses. However, I will not return to repair Ryan's damage. I'm no longer in charge of that. They were unable to articulate their thoughts. At last, my father murmured something about appreciating my stance. But it was obvious that he was disappointed. My mother didn't press it. Even though it seemed like she wanted to dispute more, I felt lighter than I have in years as I drove home that evening. Although it wasn't simple, it was essential to establish such boundaries. I wasn't cleaning up Ryan's mess or going out of my way to please my parents. I was making a decision about my future, my happiness, and myself. I became aware of a change in my demeanor throughout the course of the following several weeks. I gained the courage to set limits in other aspects of my life when I learned to say no to my parents. I stopped giving people too many reasons for my actions, whether they were personal or professional. I grew more at ease ending relationships that were no longer beneficial to me and concentrating on those that made me feel good and supported me. We achieved unprecedented heights at the peak. Because we had the greatest occupancy rates in the area, other boutique hotel owners began contacting us to seek our advisory services. In the meantime, my parents' hotel kept losing business. But I've heard that they eventually brought in a qualified hospitality consultant to attempt to improve matters. I didn't mind that Ryan and I didn't talk much. I no longer required him to recognize what had happened or provide an apology. He bore the burden of his resentment, not me. The top had come to represent everything I had fought for, including my independence, vision, and tenacity, and I thrived along with it. One morning, as I stood in the summit's lobby, I saw how the sunshine streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathing the contemporary furnishings I had created in a cozy warmth. As one of my staff members skillfully gave a couple their schedule for a picturesque snowshoe excursion, a family passed by, smiling as they made plans for the day. In that instant, I realized how far I had come on both a personal and professional level. For years, I had determined my value based on my parents' acceptance of me and their capacity to recognize and appreciate my accomplishments. However, I now understood that I was no longer in need of it. What I had constructed here was more than simply a hotel, it was evidence of my fortitude, inventiveness, and capacity to prosper in spite of the difficulties I faced. It had been a difficult voyage. Although it was terrible, I felt liberated when I let go of the dream that my family would change. I no longer felt burdened by their rejection or the weight of their expectations. Rather, I was proud. I was proud of the life I was leading, the team I had built, and the things I had created. I was flourishing, not simply getting by. I used to fantasize about going to events like the Regional Hospitality Awards ceremony. The room was bustling with journalists, hotel owners, and business executives from all over the state. I noticed my parents sitting in the rear of the room as the speaker started to name the candidates for Boutique Hotel of the Year. Even though I couldn't read their faces, I could tell how important this moment was to us all. The crowd erupted in cheers as the winner, The Peak, was revealed. As I made my way to the stage with my heart racing, my crew applauded. I looked at my parents as I accepted the prize. My mom's eyes gleamed with unshed tears, and my dad nodded slightly. Although it wasn't quite an apology, I nonetheless appreciated the recognition, something I had long since ceased expecting. I celebrated with my colleagues after the ceremony. I didn't go to my parents, and they didn't approach me. I wanted to share this experience with those who had made it possible for me. I was genuinely free of the shadows cast by their decisions and the desire for their acceptance. The goal of success was no longer to disprove them. It was about demonstrating to myself that I was sufficient, capable, and worthy, and I knew I had at last achieved peace when I raised a glass with my crew that evening.